You got Steve in Austin. How are you?
Yeah, how y'all doing?
Good.
Got a few things to say, but let me set up a premise with you real quick, okay?
Sure. Are you getting an echo?
Pardon me?
Are you hearing an echo?
Yes, I am.
Okay. We'll shut up and try and let you get your stuff out, and then I'll put you on hold so that you don't get the echo anymore.
Okay. Say you were a son or a daughter and your father went off to war. And you never met him because he got killed in battle, and all he left you was a letter. And it described what he wanted you to do with your life and how he wanted you to behave. But you never met the guy, and you don't even have a picture of him because, let's just say, your mother had to move and took you with, and all your belongings were left behind, for whatever reason.
Sure.
Okay, so hold this thought for a second. Now we have a Bible that has survived maybe 2,000 years of writings now. True, it's been translated into religious doctrines, and every religion has their own agenda. But nevertheless, you have an intent of what God wanted you to know about him in these words. Now, I've analyzed the Bible from the Jehovah's Witness position, from the Catholic position, and from the Jewish position, and many others. And here's where I'm getting to as far as what I told the screener about the atheist doctrine. And what a doctrine to me is, you take these words that have been written down, and let's say you're Jewish. Well, you can take those words and you can turn it into a doctrine that says there was no Jesus Christ, the New Testament is fake, there's not enough proof for Jesus, but there is enough proof for Moses, and there was Israel, but we don't agree with the New Testament. Now, they have an agenda, and they'll use the words and they'll change them, and they've got all kinds of doctrines written as to why the New Testament is false. But then you have the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they'll say, well, Jesus was not God, he was a God, and that Jesus and Satan are brothers, and they get all these people to go out and collect money for them, and they have their agenda. And so let's look at the atheists for a second. You all say you're not a religion, but you are preaching a doctrine that takes those words, and I know all your arguments. I've debated atheists for the last 5 years. The one that where Jesus said, this generation shall see my return, and they didn't see his return. But if you analyze the words, I can tell you what that means. Genius, it's the age. He said he'll return at the end of the age, not that generation. Y'all bring up the arguments about the Amalekites.
Hey, Steve?
Why did they
Steve?
God tell them to be killed?
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
Instead of telling me about all the other arguments that other atheists have presented, I mean, you're trying to make a case for atheist doctrine. Just make it.
What I'm saying is, your doctrine, this is a letter that's 2,000 years old, just like the Jewish people do or the Mormons do. If y'all were really atheists, you wouldn't even care about the Bible. You bring it up and say God's bad. When you want to talk about God, he's an evil God, or else there's no God. I wish y'all make up your mind. You're either anti-God or you don't care.
Are you saying that if somebody came to me and said that Darth Vader was a good person, that I shouldn't care? That it would be somehow invalid for me to say, look, this character's fictional, and if it were real, I would disagree with its positions?
Well, the reason you think he's fictional is because you talk to all these Christians and all they do is praise Jesus and don't study the Word.
No, sir. No, Steve. I used to be a Christian and was going to be a minister. It's not about talking about this. I didn't begin with an atheist presupposition and then try and prove it all false. Christianity and those people who would argue on its behalf have failed to meet the burden of proof for their claims.
Well, wait. You haven't got the burden of proof from Christians, because Christians, they have their own Bible dogma. The burden of proof is the Bible itself. If you want
no, Steve,
if you want to be a lawyer, you study law.
Steve, a burden of proof. Wow, a burden of proof defines which position needs to establish that it is actually true. You can't say the burden of proof is the Bible. What you could say is that the thing that satisfies the burden of proof is the Bible, and that would then be an argument, and we could discuss whether or not the Bible satisfies that burden of proof.
Well, I understand. I know the atheist argument is called circular reasoning. You can't use the thing to prove itself. But you have to use the Bible to prove the Bible. There's nothing else that proves it better.
Well, then you're out of gas.
Yeah, you're done.
Well, excuse me?
You're done.
I mean if you're saying that the only way you can do it is by doing it, by engaging in circular reason, then you're admitting that you can't do it.
No, listen. You can't become a lawyer without reading law books. You can't become a doctor without reading medical books. You can't understand the personality of God without reading the Bible.
Actually, Steve, you couldn't possibly be more wrong. The first doctors didn't read any doctrine books.
Well,
the first lawyers didn't read any lawyer books. And you haven't demonstrated that reading your Bible book does anything to produce any position that is true.
Okay, so let me end with one summary, and I'll give you the last word, okay?
I tell you what, I'll just take the last word, because you're not going to get to end with a summary, Steve. Sorry. If you're going to call up and say there's an atheist doctrine and then pretend to argue against arguments that we're not even making, why call the show? The answer to your question, the response to your assertion that if we really didn't believe in God, we wouldn't even care, is nonsense. The fact of the matter is I live in a world where people do believe in this God and do act on its behalf, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're correct, it's still wrong. Your analogy about getting a letter from my dad that I never knew is, I'm sorry, one of the biggest crocks of nonsense ever. Because so what? My mom gives me a letter from a man that I never knew and says, this is from your dad. Doesn't mean a thing to me. I can't be sure that it's from my dad. I'll trust my mom, generally speaking, because I know that I must have had a dad and that she'd probably know him. But I don't give a damn what's in that letter about how he wants me to live my life, because guess whose life it is? It's mine. Now, if my mom were to claim that this letter was from a man who had magical powers and wanted me to live my life a certain way, it still wouldn't matter, and I wouldn't believe her, because she has not met the burden of proof. It's absolutely absurd. There is no atheist doctrine. It isn't as if we've come up with this, we don't believe in this God and Jesus thing, so let's find all these ways to prove it wrong. No, we're sitting here, we're not selling something new. We're not buying what you're selling, and it's because none of you can sell it well. It's because you cannot defend your burden of proof. You cannot provide evidence that what you're saying is true, and you flatly admitted it. Oh, I know your atheist argument. We can't have circular reasoning. The Bible can't be proof of itself, but the Bible has to be proof of itself. Congratulations, you lose. You fail at Logic 101. You're done.
Well, besides which, if the Bible were the evidence of a God, you would think that more people would get the same answer. But, in your argument, you pointed out that the Jews, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Catholics, other, faiths have a different concept of this same God.
Yeah.
And so if your God existed, he would be such a phenomenally poor communicator that in what sense could we ever claim that he's omnipotent? He's not even capable of clearly communicating a message in a way that everyone couldn't mistake the message, because you've got radically different views of what he's trying to tell people.
Oh, but God's perfect. It's just humans who got it wrong.
Yeah, I know. We're just misinterpreting it.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the best evidence against the Bible being evidence of your God or what he wants from us is probably coming from theologians themselves. Bart Ehrman makes this point when he talks about going from being a fundamentalist Christian to Princeton to get a PhD and discovering higher criticism for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was an eye-opening experience for him. And so if we're relying on any kind of, let's see, you called it atheist doctrine. I don't think it's atheist doctrine. It's just this whole concept of higher criticism that we're looking at.
Evidence.
Yeah.
If you want to say that reason and evidence is the atheist doctrine,
yeah.
Guilty. I'll preach it all day, brother.
Yeah.
Reason and evidence all day long. See, because when I was a believer, I actually had the desire to fulfill my obligation. And since you're so interested in looking up, passages and words, go to 1 Peter 3:15 and dig into it in the original text, and you'll find out that what it's actually talking is that you're to be ready at all times to prevent the reason for the faith that's within you. And the word used there is actually logos, which in that reference isn't just referring back to Jesus, as some apologists might like to say, but it's actually talking about give a logical, non-flat assertion, testimonial, anecdotal evidence for it. Because if, in fact, all you can offer to support the reason why you believe is that because the Bible proves the Bible, you've lost. It's that simple. But